Hello everybody, welcome to That's Football, and a massive new deal for Erling Haaland could mean trouble for the future of the Premier League. Manchester City are sitting down with Haaland to get him to sign a new contract. And as I said, I think this is bad news if you're not a Man City fan, because there is no doubt in my mind that this guy will smash Alan Shearer's Premier League record very, very quickly if he stays in the Premier League with Manchester City. We can talk about 115. We can talk about the consequences of that. But I think football has changed massively in the last few years. There's quotes that have come out from Haaland's camp that whatever contract he signs, he will always be in control of his own destiny. But I think football's changed. Mino Raiola, the former agent of Erling Haaland, was probably the architect of this sort of player power. When you look at Zlatan and his ability to go from big club to big club to big club, I think Erling Haaland was always going to follow in that sort of vision whereby, you know, you start off at Mulder, it's Salzburg, it's Dortmund, it's Man City, it's Barcelona or Real Madrid, and it probably is then Italy or Bayern, you know, who knows what the pathway is, or PSG, because you make a load of money every 2 or 3 years, your agent makes a load of money, and that's the way football was going. But as we've seen this summer, that's not the way it's going anymore. I actually, when Manchester City signed Erling Haaland, for me, that was just a business transaction for everybody. You come to the Premier League, you score a load of goals, Man City win a few titles, and it's another little 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years for Haaland before he moves on to La Liga, which would be the next step in his sort of mid-20s. But football has changed now. Do Manchester City need to sell Erling Haaland? Well, no, they never would want to, but they would be burdened by what the player wants to do. But does the player have the power now? Real Madrid don't need Erling Haaland. They've just got Kylian Mbappe, they've got Vinicius Jr., they've got so many good young players. They don't need Erling Haaland, and the way that Erling Haaland plays football, he will score goals where he goes, but they don't need him. And they certainly don't need to chuck £200 million to Man City for him. Barcelona can't afford him, and he's not going to go to any other Premier League club. So where does Erling Haaland go? And we've seen this happen with a lot of players recently, where the trajectory of their career doesn't. Players are staying at clubs for longer now because the pathway out is not as easy as it was, you know, a few years ago. So if Erling Haaland signs this new contract at Manchester City and stays for another 3 or 4 years, then for Manchester City, this juggernaut will just continue. I mean, look, this is not meant to be about the 115. I will say one thing about that in a moment, but this is about Erling Haaland, who for me is the best striker in the world. That's not a shock. At one of the best teams in the world. They're not the best team in the world at the moment because it's Real Madrid. And if Erling Haaland stays there, then they are going to continue to score goals, a lot of goals, and goals win games. So this is a bad deal for the rest of the Premier League. It's a fantastic deal for Manchester City. It's not a bad deal for Erling Haaland as well. I mean, let's not forget, we're not saying that, you know, Manchester City are holding Erling Haaland captive here and he can't get out. Even if he wanted to, he's in a golden bloody cage with everything he wants being passed through. I mean, he will have a new contract, he will have a new wage, but apparently he's on £375,000 a week. But with goal bonuses, etc., some say that he regularly is topping 800k a week, which is just incredible. But who knows what that's all about. It will certainly be better when he signs this new contract. There's expected to be a release clause in the new contract, which is achievable for clubs like Real Madrid. But those release clauses now, you've got to be very, very careful. I mean, when you say it's achievable for Real Madrid, what are they going to do? Put it at 200 million? Do Real Madrid want to spend 200 million? I just don't know where the transfer market's going now, but I don't think people want to look at Osimhen. Osimhen's release clause was around 120 million. No one went anywhere near it. So I don't think there is that appetite from clubs to do that anymore. So we may end up seeing Erling Haaland stay in the Premier League for a very long time, is what I'm trying to say. And if he does, he will break that goal record. There's no doubt about it. Of course, there is a fly in the ointment here, and it is the ongoing case with Manchester City. I mean, I'm very interested to know what if, and just play with me here, because I know a lot of Man City fans watch the channel. They do, check the comments, and I think every Man City fan must watch this channel because you get a lot of comments and there's not a lot of Man City fans, but that's a joke. It's a Sunday, bear with me. But what I will say is that this is a very positive video about Erling Haaland being the best striker in the world, and if he stays at Man City, it's bad news for everybody else, but it's great news for Man City. There's nothing negative about that. They bought this player. He plays very well. He scores a lot of goals legitimately, and Man City are a good team because of it. If Manchester City do get done by the Premier League and they face relegation, I do wonder how many of these players have got relegation clauses in their contracts, because that's pretty standard for a top 4 club. That would be pretty standard for even Arsenal, Man United players. If we get relegated, I'm allowed to go for a reduced price. I've seen some of these contracts, and you know, I haven't seen a modern contract, but I've seen some ex-players' contracts, and the way it works, and you can see them as well. They've been put out there, but there, you know, if you've ever played Football Manager in that, and you think it's made believe. Obviously, it's a game, but there are a lot of stuff taken from the real game. And if Arsenal got relegated, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Saka has a clause saying that he can leave, because if you get relegated, you don't want to be playing in the bloody Championship on a 4-year deal, knowing that you've got to stay and no one's going to buy you. So a lot of these players at Man City will have release clauses, I'm sure. Whether that'll ever be a problem or not, all I'm saying is if Erling Haaland signs a new contract at Man City, it doesn't mean he's going to be playing in the Championship with Man City or in the National League or whatever happens if Man City did get relegated, because they will have those clauses in their contract that they can go. So it doesn't impact really. You know, Man City will be hoping that they're going to prove their case and get off and continue to dominate the Premier League. But if they don't, then it's not like Erling Haaland or anybody else is going to be trapped there. But as I said, I think with regards to the positivity of the contract for Manchester City and Erling Haaland signing it, why wouldn't he sign it as well? There is nowhere else to go. As I said, I feel that football at the moment in relation to transfers, the Premier League has played their part in it, has become quite predictable. I think football's biggest identity problem at the moment is it's quite predictable. Beyond the hype, and there's a lot of hype, the reality of football is losing its shine. The transfer window was dull this summer. It was dull, and that was proven by the massive reduction in spending. The Premier League is predictable in the sense that Man City are probably going to win it. Arsenal will compete, maybe Liverpool. The 3 promoted teams will go down. A lot of football is becoming quite predictable. And it's weird because I think 3 or 4 years ago, football wasn't predictable. When Liverpool were good with Klopp and challenging Man City, that was an interesting title race. Teams that were getting promoted weren't necessarily getting relegated. There was a lot more money being spent in the transfer window. I think football's become a little bit predictable here. And, you know, Erling Haaland, he doesn't really have any options. If you want... I don't think the plan was to sign for Man City because you love Sean Gota and stay there for the rest of your career. I think the plan was to sign for Man City and then go to Spain, Barcelona or Real Madrid. But the money is not there now. So it's very difficult. These players are on big wages and clubs want big fees for them. Look at Ollie Watkins at Villa. Look at Alexander Isak at Newcastle. They should be moving somewhere else. They're good enough to play up front for... And I'm not disrespecting Villa and Newcastle, but Newcastle aren't in the Champions League. Isak should be playing up front for Arsenal. That's where he should be, but Arsenal can't buy him, so he stays at Newcastle. Erling Haaland might want to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona, but they can't buy him, so he has to stay at Manchester City. And I think that's the way football's sort of gone at the moment. It's good for Newcastle fans and Aston Villa fans and Man City fans. It's not easy for players to get out, is what I'm trying to say. Get your comments in, smash a like on the video. What do you think this means for the Premier League if Erling Haaland signs and stays at Man City for the next few years? It's great for City, but we will see what it means for everybody else. Take care, smash a like, get your comments in. Do you think football is changing as well? I think players getting out of clubs is not as straightforward as it used to be. There's a change, and I think it's harder for clubs to spend money. Speak to you in a bit. Thanks for watching.